joining us. This is Sipping Tea with Nat and Z. I'm Nat.
And I'm Z. Hello, hello.
What's
Uh,
up?
Nothing. We're just gonna get right into our topic of the day because we don't have a lot, but we have a lot going on right now.
Right.
Uh, this episode is called "You've Got Such a Big Ego." We're going to talk about the ego and all things about the ego. So let's get into the
Mm-hmm.
tea of the day. We are not tea experts. You should speak to your doctor when drinking herbal tea because there could be potential side effects. We're not affiliated with any of these companies nor are these endorsements. So what are we sipping on today?
All right. So, real quick, the Queen of the Heart Tea, which is a nod to Valentine's month, love, all those things, in addition to Black history. It's called the Blooming Queen Rose, and it's collected from Yunnan, China, from back in 3000 BC. It's thought that's where the origin of where roses were cultivated. It's a nod to Aphrodite and all things love. So we'll have it up there for y'all to check out. It's supposed to be nice and refreshing and, all things lovey dovey. So happy Valentine's Day, y'all. Enjoy.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
So let's get into some hot tea, which is why we didn't do a lot of banter in the beginning because there's some
Right.
some things that I have to get off my chest. So I have decided that I am now in the beehive. I was
Mm,
beehive adjacent, but now I
adjacent.
am officially in the beehive because of all of the nonsense that has been occurring around her tour. So let
Yo.
let me tell you why I'm now in the beehive. I've
Hmm.
realized that critical thinking is lacking, and that people just take what they see on the internet and they just run with it.
Oh, yes.
I thought that that was just for the young folk, but it seemed like some of y'all old folk got some
Mm,
issues with that too. So let me break some stuff down to you. So Ticketmaster is a monopoly. They've been a monopoly for a very long time. If you've been
correct.
going to concerts, you know that Ticketmaster makes you now get into a queue when they do these pre-sale codes, because sometimes for certain artists the demand is greater than
Hmm.
um, the number of tickets that they have. That's number one. Number two, number two, the number two, the other issue is that Ticketmasters uh they don't really allow for any other organization or company to get into the game.
Right.
And I find that very it's very opportunistic because they can basically charge whatever they want. They
Gouge.
are
Price
in,
gouging.
yeah, they are in the whole mix, like ticket sales, the concert venue, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So with that being said, some prices started to get posted about um what,
Girl.
yes, it's a monopoly, what Ticketmaster, um I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought really quickly. I apologize, y'all. It's been a morning. We are struggling this morning with all kinds of difficulties.
That struggle love for
It's very
February.
struggle this morning. Are we in a retrograde? Because this is some bullshit.
Yeah, it
Um,
could. Yeah, it's a full moon. It was a full moon
so there
today.
it is. There it is.
Full moon today.
So what we have going on is that somebody started to price these tickets at an exorbitant amount, right? These
Mm-hmm.
secondhand resellers, and they've been telling people that these tickets are
Oh,
$2,900. So those prices,
$8,000.
right, so those prices have been posting on the internet, and people really think that Beyonce herself is out here telling folks the way you're going to come and see me is if you pay $3,000. That's not how it works. It's not how it works. And then people got mad because the Senate, Congress posted something, was like Ticketmaster, we're watching you now that Beyonce is
Oh
about to go on
yeah.
tour. But be clear, the only reason why Congress is involved is because when the Taylor Swift concert went, her tickets went on sale. They
Mm-hmm.
couldn't buy tickets for their side chicks, side dicks, and children. So because of that, now they want to jump into it because heaven forbid you can't get tickets to see Taylor Swift. That's the only reason
God.
why they care. Let me be clear. If Beyonce had released her concert before Taylor Swift,
First.
they would not give a shit. They wouldn't care. So let's just let that be clear. Let's also let it be clear that Beyonce isn't the only artist that this is happening to. This is even happening to smaller known, well, to smaller artists or artists that are no longer as popular as they once were. I don't know.
Really?
There's this group called Fallout Boy, and the
Oh yeah.
people were up in arms about Fallout Boy because they couldn't get tickets, and the tickets were going for $40. But then with the additional cost that Ticketmaster went in, it was like $80. How are you charging me $80 for a ticket that's $40?
What?
Yeah, because of all the fees and extra things.
Oh, those damn fees.
Yes. So, the same thing with John Mayer. We also saw
Mhm.
this, and this is how I know that the Congress doesn't care, because what happened when Adele? This happened with Adele.
That's right. It did happen with Adele.
Congress didn't say anything.
Didn't give a hoot nanny.
Nothing. No, nothing. Not a damn. So I have it under good authority that her tickets are not going to be priced that, but this is the base price now. This
Uh huh.
isn't like after fees and taxes and all of that stuff. This is literally what the prices are going to be. So I have here that the prices for her concerts for general admission may be about 125.
That's
Um,
not bad
no, it's saying
at all.
$75 to about 125,
Uh
but
huh.
that's but again, people, this is before Ticketmaster adds in whatever price gouging is going to add in.
Right.
Um, I've heard that there's going to be some tickets that are going to go up to about 250 if you're like down in the standing area. Um, and then there's some Beehive VIP that's probably going to be about $1,000.
Right.
And
Is that
then
when
like
you got to buy like four or like a group?
that, I do not know. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
So I just want you all to be clear that it's not Beyonce doing this. It's Ticketmaster. And Ticketmaster is evil, okay? Ticketmaster is the devil. Blame it on any if you want to blame it on anybody, blame it on Ticketmaster. These
Ticketmaster.
artists really don't have a lot. There's a clip that I wish I'll may share it, where these people were talking at they were actually on I guess they were in some committee talking about how Ticketmaster price gouges and what actually goes to the art, how much actually goes to the artist, and how much the
Mhm.
artist is actually involved and
Right.
setting prices and all that stuff. And because Ticketmaster is in with the venue, they could charge whatever they want,
Really? So the how has that gone on for so long?
because nobody's been saying anything. Nobody cares. Like,
Huh.
why would Congress care when we have balloons flying over the country,
True.
uh, that they shot down, probably chemical war, like
Oh,
that's
they did shoot it down?
and over North Carolina, South Carolina, when it got over to the Atlantic. So mind you, this balloon went all the way from one end to the other, all over the country. And there's another one in South America right now.
So they let it get all the way across? So it
Yes,
took
from the
whatever
Pacific to
pictures
yep,
that it needed to, and now it's in the ocean
yep,
after the fact?
from the Pacific to the Atlantic. So whatever.
Okay.
Um so
That's weird.
that's one thing. The other thing is the Super Bowl, okay?
Mhm.
Oh, and before I move on, yes, I plan on going to see her multiple multiple times. I'm getting my full life this summer because we about to
Amen.
be in World War III. So
Oh, Jesus. I hope
just do what makes you happy. Just
you said
do
do what makes sense.
what makes you
But those
happy.
memes though had me rolling.
Yes,
The memes
yes,
are like, so you want to go to Beyonce and you want to sell your house? Call me.
yes, 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 yes. I saw that meme. So just if you're planning on going, but here's the thing: if you are a
Mhm.
true Beyonce fan, you know that if you're a true Beyonce fan, then you know to be prepared. You're always prepared
Right.
when she is
Coming.
coming. So
You got to
you
put a Beyonce account.
yes. So you have to understand that. And if you don't understand that, then you actually are not a Beyonce fan.
Right. But I think like if you had when was her last concert?
2016.
Oh, so y'all had years to save up.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If y'all really wanted to go. So I don't begrudge anyone that has put that money away and said, "You know what? I'm going to spend that and get my best life." Now, some of y'all about to take that tax return when you know you need that money for something else, people not giving up rent. I'm gonna need y'all to have somewhere to go after the concert,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're not evicted. Okay,
Mhm.
that ain't no good.
Yes, it's not, no. But
No, not a good look. Because
no.
Beyonce ain't coming to pay your rent. So be smart about it, people. Just be smart about it.
But in the same breath, I mean, this is how this industry is now. Like, you can get ticket concert tickets using Klarna, Affirm,
Yeah,
Afterpay. They make sure they going to let you.
get day
Right.
money.
Because from what I've been told, places don't offer layaway anymore because of these Affirm Afterpay things.
Oh,
So that's because, and I feel like it came about even more during the pandemic because a lot of
hmm,
places didn't want to hold stuff. Um, and they just closed a lot of
it's more
their,
staff too.
yeah, that
People's money was
exactly.
funny, so they
Yeah.
gave people money to the opportunity to stretch things. So
Yes, yes.
I think it's a gift and a curse sometimes because you're like, oh, I'm gonna just Klarna it, or I'm gonna just afterpay it, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I, like I said, if you know, you really had a year to um get prepared, so to say, because her album came out a very long time ago. So you
Right.
had some time. You had some time to fully prepare yourself for this concert. Um so that's one thing. And then the Super Bowl. Yes, the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. This is going to be a very good Super Bowl. It's the Eagle versus the Kansas City Chiefs. They
Mm-hmm.
will be in Arizona. It's Andy Reid against his old team and a
That's
coach.
wild.
Yes, and a coach that he fired. So the coach that's for the
What?
Eagle, yes, I think was with Kansas City.
Uh huh.
Our producer would know for sure, but I believe he
Right.
was with Kansas City, and Andy Reid fired him, and then he became the Eagles head coach. So there's that. You have two
Oh,
brothers now who are
yes.
playing against each other, even though they're on opposite sides
Right.
um, of,
Kelsey,
yeah, the Kelsey brothers. So you have
he's so
Jason.
cute.
Yes, Jason Kelsey is on the offense, and so is
Mm-hmm.
his brother. So
Yeah.
they won't be on the field at the same time, but at least
Mm-hmm.
their mother doesn't have to, like, their mother wins either way.
Right.
It's the
Right.
Kelsey Bowl, okay?
Right. Right.
Jason Kelsey looks like he was there on January 6th. However, he is very, very, from what I can see and what I can tell, not a January 6th kind of guy. He's very
Right.
liberal, very like down to earth. Everybody loves him.
Mm.
He is not a January 6th guy. He just looks like it. Where Travis is very
Hey.
much of the cult. He's very
Yes.
tries to be about the culture and of the culture, even though he's
Mm-hmm.
not of the culture.
Isn't his girlfriend is of the culture,
She's
correct?
not. That's not his girlfriend anymore. They broke up.
Oh, they broke up.
Hmm.
Oh,
And she's beautiful.
she's gorgeous.
She's absolutely
So who he got
beautiful.
now?
I don't
Or
know.
he's
I know
single?
he's dating another black. I've heard that he's dating another black woman. Who this black woman is, I do not know.
Yeah, I think that's all he's dated primarily, from what I understand.
I believe so. I
Mm-hmm.
believe so. Um, and then you have two. Well, I now use air quotes black quarterbacks because you have Patrick Mahomes and Jalen Hurts. I just say I'm not a Patrick Mahomes fan. I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, okay.
And I don't. I feel like he is definitely Blue Lives Matter, All Lives Matter. He gives me that
Not the all
vibe.
lives matter.
Yeah, he gives me that vibe.
You're like, oh, you're an all lives matter person.
Yeah, where
Mm.
Jalen Hurts is definitely
He cute,
of the
ain't he?
culture, in the culture. His team of, like, the people who
Yes, his
handles him,
management
his
team,
management team,
all
all
women.
women, half, the majority of which are black. His agent,
Hmm.
black, a black woman. He has a
Hmm.
black girlfriend who is very well to do on her own.
Okay.
So I'm rooting for my hometown, and trust and believe I will be at the parade this year. I did not get to go in 2018 because I was pregnant with Charlie.
Hmm.
So I will fully be there drunk, amongst other things, with my sister, fully prepared to go ham once the Eagles win the Super Bowl. So
I love it. I love
Yes.
it.
And so that's it. The only thing I want to close out with before we go to a break is just happy Black History Month.
Mm-hmm.
um Megan the Stallion, I still hope that you are doing well and protecting your mental health and
Mm.
well-being. I mean, the streets are saying she's pregnant. If
Really?
that is the case, congratulations. I hope that you are taking very good care of yourself. um if that is not the case and you just need a break, will you take as long as you need, because you
Let her
deserve,
live,
you
man. Let her
deserve.
be, man.
um and yeah, and I blame Rock Nation for the balloon. It's Rock Nation's fault that that balloon got this far.
Not Rock Nation's fault.
It's on Rock Nation. So,
Oh my goodness. It's too funny. All right, y'all. So we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna jump right into our tea time segment. And we're back. So, as we mentioned briefly, this in the beginning, this episode is a nod only because of Beyonce Ticket's such a big ego. We thought that would make sense for y'all. So we're gonna look into ego tripping and how, if it's not checked, it can lead to your demise and all the little nuances that are associated with it. So a point to ponder. So perhaps Freud's single most enduring and important idea. Those of you who know Sigmund Freud, the father of psychology, let me put that out there first before I'm just saying Freud and you're like, who the hell is Freud? Anyway, and he had an important idea that the human psyche, also known as a personality, has more than one aspect. Freud's personality theory, which he established in 1923, saw the psyche structured into three parts. They are the id, ego, and superego, which we all have heard of, and we all may have our preconceived notions about, or what we think we've heard, or according to Beyonce, that was the first time we heard it, and we're like, oh, that's what it means, and that's a double entendre.
yes.
So yeah, just understand that, right? First of all. So they're systems and not parts of the brain, and not any way physical per se. So according to his psychoanalytical theory, id is a primitive and instinctual part of the mind that contains sexual and aggressive drives and hidden memories, while the superego operates as the moral conscience, and the ego is a realistic part that mediates between the desire of the id and the superego. And ego is actually the Latin word for I, and it influences our thoughts, motivations, emotions, and behaviors. So kind of think of it as, when y'all see like the good angel and the good angel and the angel and the devil on either of your shoulders. That's a lot of times how it's presented visually, to give everybody that idea of where the moral compass comes into play,
Yeah, that
right?
context.
Yeah, that context. So, each part of that compromises its own unique features and how it interacts on a whole, and how it presents itself in your behavior and how you make decisions. So it really is a huge part. It's kind of, I think somebody made a reference that for such a big part of our life and it to be such a little itty bitty word, but it has such impact on how we interact, how we vibe with people, how we do our jobs, how we build relationships with each other and ourselves.
Right.
And, a lot of people may think when you hear ego, it's pride, and they are not the same thing.
They aren't. And because the ego is more about self perception and pride is more about emotion. So,
Hmm.
ego is more about how you see yourself,
Hmm.
right? And the
Right.
pride is more about the emotions,
That
right?
comes with
That
that.
comes with that, right?
Hmm.
So a person is often deemed too proud when they think they're above a certain task or role, right? And you usually think you're above a certain task or role because of your ego. Oh,
Mm.
I'm not, or get somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
I ain't doing that. Get somebody else to do it. So what is the ego? We talked about it briefly
Hmm.
through a psychoanalytical perspective, but breaking it down to more layman's terms, like Natalie said, it's the Latin word for I.
Hmm.
It is similar to self-esteem, self-importance, self-worth, self-respect, self-conceit, self-image, self-confidence. Um, it is something that experiences and reacts to the outside world, And like Natalie said, it is a mediator between the id and the super ego.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it functions to develop explanations and justifications for your actions. So
That's a
that's a
good
good
one.
one because, that is what we use to
Yeah.
justify what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. You
Mm-hmm.
may think it's a like, I'm not going to do this because my ego is not going to allow me to do this.
Mm.
And then your pride will get in because you're like, I'm above all this.
Mm-hmm.
You not getting me to do this. I'm too good for you. I'm too good for this. I don't need this
Mm-hmm.
job. I make six figures. I got 7 degrees. I you know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Exactly.
that's what the ego is. It's the justification, the explanation for your actions. And a lot of people behave poorly,
Yeah.
and it's really their ego has gone unchecked.
Phew, that part.
Okay. And something that we're going to talk about next week, the ego is pretty tied closely to being to a lot of narcissistic tendencies
Mm-hmm.
and
Very much so.
narcissism.
Yeah.
So ego tripping is like the act or course of an action that enhances and satisfies one ego. It's somebody who behaves to their own satisfaction and enjoyment, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's often at the detriment of others, or people suffer because somebody else's
Mm-hmm.
ego has gone unchecked.
Yeah.
And we find that a lot when it comes to men and women. We find that a lot when it comes to men and women. We see what happens when egos go unchecked.
Mm-hmm. And then some. So, on in this particular topic, we're going to dive into the male ego in regards to black men and women. And when we think about ego, most people automatically think of a man. And how their prowess and culturally their stereotypes, their inflation and deflation of the ego, and and I think it's an ebb and flow with society that feeds the ego, yet we condemn the ego if it goes unchecked. So some people, or some men rather, measure themselves when they're thinking about their ego and answering these questions. Am I strong enough? Am I wealthy enough? Do I meet traditional definition of masculinity? Something that we talked about when we were talking about the toxic masculinity episode. Do I attract women or men? Or um, do I control things or people? And how much prowess do I have or dominion do I have over those things? And do people, you got to think about, how do people recognize me, as far as how the male ego may speak to you, in the sense of, how do people see me, and how am I presenting myself to them? And it's based on a long held assumption of those stereotypes and what it means to be male in society, consciously or unconsciously. And unconsciously, it's usually been internalized by men based on how they've been raised, what society norms are. And to understand the male ego, you need to understand how society shapes them. You think about all the things, all the little quips that we may say about how you, as a man, what you're supposed to do. They're supposed to be the provider. They're supposed to be assertive, and if
Mm-hmm.
they're aggressive, it's okay. Because on the flip side, if a woman does what a man normally does according to his ego, she's seen as a bitch or
Mm.
being too much. But if a man does it,
Or
that's what he's supposed to.
promiscuous,
Or
or a hoe,
promiscuous, exactly.
or aggressive.
All of those things, because you think, well, if I'm trying, and that's okay for a man to do it because it supports the ego, and it's driven by recognition, attention, and action. And you think about, like, peacocking, even in nature, when when a male peacock or something is trying to get the mating season, they walk around and strut and get that attention, and they want their counterpoint to recognize them, to accept them for who they are, and then they'll go toe to toe with another peacock to flutter their little wings, to get the attention of the girl, which translates to society and how men boast. Some men boast, let me not generalize.
Mm-hmm.
And that all feeds, comes from part of the ego. And one thing I think is also, it's kind of like a gift and a curse, because you think about how society, we expect men to have a particular presence. And then that comes with, if men aren't supposed to cry, they're not supposed to show emotion. But on the flip side, we get upset when men don't cry or they don't show emotion. And then if a man, because of that, they usually present themselves as stoic, because they're like, well, I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't. So
Right.
they just don't show any emotion. And then a lot of times that may come in the form of, if they are upset, it shows presents as anger because they don't have any anger is acceptable emotion from men, whereas crying and vulnerability, for based on societal views, is not. And that's something that they'll do instead. If they're sad, they may get angry. If they're, irritated, they may get angry. Anger may be the first go-to for anything else instead of showing vulnerability or understanding what's going on with their emotions. And that stems from the ego. And then you move on to where this comes from and how it's presenting itself. The male ego is killing Black women. And I know that may seem as a really strong statement right now, but in light of some statistics that we've seen over the past couple of years, when it comes to domestic abuse that we've touched upon in past episodes, we really need to think about the fact Black women deserve the right to be free from violence. And unfortunately, that is always not the case. Even to that point, Zarif, when we were talking about where Megan Thee Stallion is and Tory Lanez, and how she has kind of been shamed for her stepping up for herself
Mm-hmm.
for when violence was committed against her.
Well,
And then,
I mean, but even if you take the statistics out of it, right?
mhm,
And like you bringing up, there's a good example, you bringing up Megan Thee Stallion. Taking statistics out of it and just looking at where we are as a
mhm,
society, a woman I can't go to, like, I'm thankful that I have not had these experiences in my 40s,
mhm,
but I don't know if that's because I look old or what. No, I kid, but I don't. Um, I remember in my 20s, like,
mhm.
being hounded and harassed by men walking down the
Yes.
street and
Yes.
then not speaking or
Mhm.
not entertaining or engaging and then being called everything but a child of God.
Yes.
Now you get killed. Oh, you
Right.
don't, and that is ego. And let me
Right.
tell you, the man's ego, a
Mm.
man, I'm not going to say all men, but men in those situations, their ego is telling them, I deserve that woman.
Right.
I deserve her. I want her. She will give me what I want. And then
Mm.
when she doesn't, the pride kicks in. And then the pride says, are you going to stand there and let her tell you you're not worth it? Which is all self projection, right?
Right.
Because it's really about you and how you internally feel about yourself. Because I
Of
should be able to
course.
reject you, and that shouldn't be an issue. Okay.
Everybody gets rejection. Everybody feels
Everybody,
rejection at some
everybody.
point.
But for some men, that then causes them to cause harm to women. Why can't I just not want to be with you? So
Yep.
I've read and I've been on, like, on TikTok and stuff, because I sometimes now I do research through TikTok. Don't judge me. I'll type in a topic and then I'll look
Right.
at some videos. And there are women who literally have gotten Google numbers
Mm.
or will give the man their real number if they know they'll never be in that location ever again, and
Mhm.
then just block them once they call because they don't want to have to endure any violence
Yeah.
or erratic behavior from that man. That is
That's crazy.
crazy.
That's crazy. And I think that also speaks to, you think about how have we come to this point? Why is it that back in the day, of course you would get called every name in the book just because you didn't want to talk to this person? And you should not feel obligated to talk to this person. And now they're putting their beliefs systems on you and entitlement and all of that stuff. And I'm just curious, how did we get to this point where you get every child, you know what I mean?
Every name
Called
but the
every
child of
name
God.
but the child of God. And then now it's automatically, well, you didn't get me, fuck you, bitch, all this other stuff, and now I'm gonna shoot you. And
It's
people don't.
it's lack of therapy. Um it's lack of communication, and it's lack of
Hmm.
direction. It's a lot that goes
Yeah,
into that.
not one
It
thing.
is,
Definite.
male, it's toxicity at the
Hmm.
highest level. But even taking that, like, taking the violence away from it, right?
Hmm.
um it's just a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding. I should be able to
Definitely.
tell you I'm not interested, and that should be the end of the conversation.
And your ego should not be crushed by that.
No. and
And
the
because, yeah,
And
it
the
just shouldn't.
fact that it's like we were talking about the inner child. Something happened to you that
Hmm.
caused you to feel that you deserve.
The
And
sense
maybe
of
it's
entitlement.
right. And maybe it's because you've gone without for so long
Hmm.
that any slight rejection causes you to have a reaction that doesn't meet
Right.
the rejection. You
And
understand
you're
what I'm
triggered.
saying?
Right.
You're triggered by
Exactly.
that. On the flip side, it's the same thing with these passport bros. Your ego tells you what? That I'm supposed to
Mm,
be a traditional woman in what sense? Was your mother a traditional woman?
that part.
And what does that mean? I'm supposed to
Traditional
say,
in quotes.
to me, when I hear traditional woman, I'm going to tell y'all what I hear. I'm going to tell you what I hear. You want me to be financially dependent upon you so that you could do whatever you want to me and I cannot
Mm,
leave. That's what
hello.
traditional means to me because that is what happened to a lot of our grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
Big Mama wasn't always in that relationship because she still wanted to be. It's because she
Hello.
couldn't leave.
Exactly. I think that's a lot of that comes from a lot of the fact that we're more independent. And people think, oh, we were married for 20, 40, 50 years and all of those things. And that's what you aspire to. And now that women are like, look, I don't need you. I'm going to go about my business and not take what you're dishing out, the male ego can't handle that
No,
because now they're women are bucking
right.
because they're like, I'm in a place now. I don't have to stay with you. Financially, I'm in a place where I can move on and take care of myself. I don't need you. I may want you, and wanting them is not enough. And their ego does not support just being wanted.
No.
They
The
need to feel
ego,
needed.
and the ego, here's the thing, the ego is what drives this nonsense.
Yep.
Because here's the thing, this is what kills me. You want me to be a stay-at-home wife, you want me to cook and clean and do all
Mm,
that. What are you bringing to the table that makes me feel comfortable enough to do that? You
thank you.
go to these other countries, third world countries in some places where these women don't have a lot of options or
Right.
resources. That is why you go there. Let's be clear, because they're not going to
Hmm.
they're not going to leave you, right? They're going to become very dependent on you. Whereas with, I think, black women, we're not asking for anything, just for you to be our equal.
Right.
I'll do, you want me to do that? You want me to be submissive? I can be submissive in those areas, but you have to make me feel comfortable enough to
Right.
be submissive to you.
But think
Um,
about the upbringing for both sexes,
yeah.
and how sometimes the female ego comes into play and can be just as domineering,
Oh,
just as
absolutely.
expectant as how that comes into play. And like even with in music, and that's the only way I can think of it, when chicks are like trying to get the bag. That dude can't do this for me. I ain't got not time for him. I'm not doing this, that, or the other thing. If he not giving me material stuff, if
Oh,
he's not paying my
absolutely.
rent,
Oh,
and then
absolutely.
and I think it's unfortunately in response to what the male ego has presented over these years, when their dependency was paramount. Like women had to do that, but now that that's coming out of that's evolving, some women have taken it in the other direction and said, okay, I'm gonna flip it on you, and you need to do all these things, and they present their ego just runs in a particular direction to go up against men.
Right. I feel like both women and men, their ego. Well, before I go into that, what I think maybe we should dive into how the female ego presents itself a little bit, because I do have a hot
Yeah.
take on female ego as well, because it's not just, I mean, I feel like, let's just get into the female
Right, right.
and then I'll save that piece for later.
Right. And one thing with the female ego, when we were doing some research, most things when you look up ego, the male comes up because folks don't perceive that some women have an ego, but it is masked in how we love, how we interact with other folks, and when we're trying to be feminine and devotional to our respective partner. That's maybe different ways that it can show up if you feel, but when the female ego is in the negative aspect, like I just said, it comes up with being entitled, love bombing. Some people may call it like being a vixen and you'd being all sultry, and, but it also may come from a place of insecurity, or that they show up as being passive aggressive or domineering. It's a whole gamut of emotions and behaviors that the female ego can present itself as,
Right.
based on where the upbringing or the experiences of that particular female have come from.
Right.
And I think it also based on how they've interacted with men once they become grown,
Right.
and and how that may manifest. And if some women are hurt, I think a lot of times some women go from 0 to 60 and go the other way because the male ego in the relationship they had hit, I guess, kind of knocked them down. So they're like, you know what, forget this. I'm not doing that. And I think also that comes from like when men say, well, women come out here asking like they don't need a man, and they don't need, and then their personality comes out in such a way that I guess I'm trying
I can tell you, it's
yeah,
both of them are rooted in some form of trauma. I feel like
definitely.
from when the ego is unchecked for both a man and a woman, I
Hmm.
feel like it's unchecked because of some trauma that happened
Hmm.
that has not been healed.
Right.
For men,
Multiple,
right.
oftentimes.
Unfortunately, I feel like with men, because of the level of um because of how society sees men and views men and has portrayed men, like it does come when it's unchecked, it comes off aggressive and
Hmm.
violent.
Yeah.
Whereas women, when their ego is unchecked, it comes off as the stuck up,
Hmm.
domineering, I'm entitled to this, so you will give me this.
Right.
Bougie princess, I'm going to run this and you're not. You're not going to tell me what
Hmm.
to do. I'm not compromising type of attitude,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Um, I feel like the man having an ego, I feel like both can be emotionally damaging to one another.
Agree.
And I feel
Wholeheartedly.
like we don't talk about the ego with a woman enough because it doesn't present itself in the way that we traditionally view ego showing up,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Um,
And society's made a space for that now where previously it did not.
right. But on the flip side, we do get checked with our ego because we get told that we're being a bitch, or
Yep.
we're being too aggressive, or we're not being feminine enough, or we're not allowing
Hmm.
you to lead us, or we're not being submissive. Um
Hmm.
and I do see like that there are times when a female ego absolutely can ruin a relationship. If
For
you
sure.
don't compromise, if you don't soften up, if you don't just fall back sometimes, like, and I understand, again, it's rooted in trauma because if you're a woman who has grown up in a single parent home and you've been told you had to get it out the mud from the beginning, and you have, once you finally make it to wherever it is you feel like the pinnacle,
Hmm.
where who going to check you, boo?
Who gonna check me, boo?
Who's going to check me,
I think
boo?
that's like the ultimate female ego tagline. Who gonna check me, boo?
Right. And I feel like a little bit of ego is good. I don't feel like
Yeah.
ego is always a bad thing,
It's
but I
balance.
feel like
It's all about
it
balance.
is about balance. I feel like a good example of bad, like ego that's really unchecked, is like sometimes how Nicki Minaj acts online. I feel like her ego sometimes is definitely unchecked, and it comes across as being very unchecked.
Hmm.
Um, on the flip side, Kanye West is definitely a person whose ego has
Yeah.
definitely been inflated and has been left unchecked.
Yeah.
Um, so there is a definite I don't know. It's weird because again, we think of ego always. We tend to think of ego.
That Nego girl.
That might be my new word. I'm gonna say he got
Ego.
an ego. Um, but ego, we have to realize, like, honestly, sometimes if we're having problems in our relationships, is the
Hmm.
ego what is causing the problems in our
Yes.
relationship? Because a lot of times I don't think
Exactly.
we think about that. We think about all these other things, but we don't really dive into, is my ego what needs to be checked here, and that
Hmm.
is why I'm having the problem that I'm having in this relationship. So
Hmm.
a big ego, listen, a big ego and a healthy relationship do not go in hand, or hand in glove, or they just don't go together, boo. Okay, they
Right.
don't.
At all.
And we've seen it, right? We've seen people's relationships. I mean, Kanye and Kim, their relationship has falling apart.
Mm.
And I'm pretty sure part of it was Kanye's big ego. I'm not saying that was all of it because I don't know them
Right.
people. I ain't in a relationship, but we've seen a lot of things play out online, and I'm pretty sure that his ego was partly
Something to
to
do with
blame,
it.
right?
Something to do with it.
Right. So you need to have a healthy ego in a relationship in order for it to work, right?
Right.
Because there needs to be a healthy sense of self-esteem, a healthy level of self-importance, self-worth,
Mhm.
self-respect, self-confidence. You need that, right?
Yeah.
And
So
we
you
all
don't
know
get
that.
walked all over when you're
Exactly.
in the relationship. To know that
Exactly.
you acknowledging your ego can sometimes get you out of a situation because you realize, look, I'm better than this. My self esteem is such a way that I don't have to take this,
Right.
and um you take charge of your position. So
Yes.
it's not always a bad thing, but it's important to definitely have a healthy view of
Yes,
that.
there are moments that you do have to be humble, you do have to compromise, you do
Mhm.
have to kind of put yourself in the other person's shoes and position. But if you find yourself never doing that, then maybe you want to see what's going on with your ego.
Mhm.
This is how ego can ruin relationships. You may find that you always have to you have a desire to be right all the time,
Mm.
every time. Nobody's right 100% of the time. Nobody.
Ever.
Ever. It's
Mm-mm.
just not possible. You're
The only
going to
thing
be
that's
wrong.
right 100% of the time is a clock.
And
That's it.
sometimes that ain't always.
9 o'clock a.m., nine
It
o'clock
depends
p.m.
on how you set that bitch. Because
True,
I got
true
clocks
that.
in this house that show different times. Okay, so the only thing that might be right is the hour. The minute
Facts. The
you
minutes
gotta
not so much.
the minutes maybe not so much. um, if you find that your communication is dropping or waning, that could be
Mhm.
an issue because maybe you feel like I'm the shit. I ain't got to talk to her. I ain't got to talk to him for what. I ain't got to do that. Um, you begin to express jealousy, right? But it's unfounded jealousy. It's stifling jealousy. It is sometimes retroactive, okay?
Ah,
Okay?
jealousy and resentment go hand in hand
They sure
sometimes.
do.
We talked about that on one of our shows in
Yes.
Envy.
And that's ego, right? Because you
Mhm.
feel like how dare or let's see this. Unfounded jealousy can sometimes be rooted in the fact that you're doing something. So your ego is telling you, I can do this,
Ooh,
but you
ooh.
can't.
Say it louder for the people in the back.
I can do this, but you can't.
Mm.
So what you out here
Mm.
doing? Well, you ain't
What?
doing nothing. And the
Right,
reason why they think that is because they're out here doing something. You understand
right.
what I'm saying?
And the ego is pressing them out to press you out for something that you not even doing because
Exactly.
they out here acting, reckless.
Exactly. You play the victim a lot, right? Um,
Mm.
you have the sign of a bruised ego is that you have this nagging fear that you're not enough. And you approach a relationship from a position of being a victim and self-pity.
Right.
Okay. There's a lot of pride and arrogance, right? I look at what I'm bringing to the table.
Mm.
I
Yes.
got
Showboating.
I'm telling you what you need to do. I'm running this. That is pride and arrogance. You feel me?
Mm.
Like the difficult to admit and apologize even when you're
Ooh,
wrong.
that one. That's a
That's a
biggie.
biggie. That is a
That
biggie.
is
That is
huge.
very big. Narcissistic tendencies, which we're going to get into next week. I'm not going to go into it too much because the narcissism is a whole nother bag.
Mm.
But narcissistic tendencies, your ego will push you away from people. It will stop you from growing. It will block love from coming into your life. It will kill your happiness. It makes you critical and irrational. All of these things can happen. I have a very good before you need to gain control of your ego, right? It's
Right.
the best thing that you could do for yourself because if you don't, it's going to continue to get in the way of your relationships, your career, and your life. A good example of this is if you're a Jay-Z fan and you listen to the last album he put out, which was 444.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first, I think it is the first song. It is the first song on that album. It's called Kill Jay-Z. And that song is literally all about him killing his ego.
Mm.
That is all that song is about.
How many
Him.
people think you picked up on that?
I don't know. I mean, if you're a Jay-Z fan, you
You did.
knew that was what it was about. One, because he
Right.
talked about it a lot. But
Mm-hmm.
if you hear the song and you listen to the lyrics, you know that he's killing himself. He's killing the
Mm-hmm.
old version of
The
himself,
old version,
and
right?
he
Because
is
that
now
ego,
growing into the new version of himself.
right? Too much bravado from that previous self, and now
Yes.
he's growing into the new.
And he talks about all of the things that his ego made him do, right?
Ooh.
His ego caused him to stab somebody. His
Mm-hmm.
ego caused him to cheat on his wife. His ego caused him to then get into a fight with said wife's sister in an elevator.
Mm.
His ego caused him to I think he shot his brother when
Oh,
he was
wait.
younger.
Oh
Yes.
my.
His ego caused him to get into, even though rap beefs are normal, the
Mm-hmm.
rap beef with Nas did take a real, it took a turn to the dark side when he started talking about the fact that he was having sex with his Nas's baby mama in
Mm.
their back seat and did
Mm.
some things on their baby's car seat. You understand what I'm saying?
Ooh.
That ego, and here's the thing. The reason why he said that is because his ego told him, "You're not. I'm the best. You're not gonna. You. There's no way you
Right.
can ever You never gonna beat me." And then Nas came out with Ether, and then he got hurt. His ego got bruised, and then Pride stepped in, and then he just tried to cut his throat.
Right.
And then I'ma sleep with your girl. I'ma just do the most reckless shit
All
just to
ego.
prove to you that you're
I
not better
can.
than me. And then I'm gonna put it on a song and let the
Mm-hmm.
whole world know what I did.
Hello.
That's ego. You understand what I'm saying? He
Live and on
said,
stage.
yep, he said in the song, all I had to do was me and Solange ain't have to get into that fight. All I had to do was say I was wrong. All
Yep.
I had to do was say I was wrong, and I didn't. And so Solange wailed on my ass, and that could have all been avoided if I'd have just said, yeah, I shouldn't have did that. But my
Right.
pride wouldn't let me do it because my ego tells me I'm the head NIC, I'm the HNIC. You ain't gonna tell me
Go
what
check
I'm
me,
gonna do.
boo.
You ain't gonna check me.
Me.
You understand what
Mm.
I'm saying? That is what ego does. Ego causes wars.
Yes. Think about that. Think about all the wars that have ever happened. They all come from the basis of ego. In my country, my position in this world is better than yours, and here's why. And here I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to talk about you and how it was done.
It's ego.
Yeah.
Um, and so, we thought this was a very good topic to talk about because I think it's one of the things that people just don't really focus on a lot when they're dealing with their relationships with
Mm-hmm.
people or when they're looking at how things crumble, right? Their
Mm.
relationships crumble, or they're, you know, unable to really fully relate to other people.
Isolation may come into play.
Right. They don't have the friendships that they thought. It's all
Yeah.
ego. And
Yeah.
ego, unfortunately, you can't get ahead because your pride prevents you from humbling yourself enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in order to check your ego, you do have to humble yourself. And a lot of
Exactly.
people don't know how to do that.
That, yeah, the hubris with some folks is
And it's
over the
okay,
top.
but here's the thing. To it is okay to brag, right? It's okay
Yeah.
to I'm gonna say brag. It is okay to celebrate your wins and your accomplishments. It is okay to feel good about the things that you have done in your life. But it takes a turn when you make that be the only thing about you, and
Right.
then you use that as a catalyst to basically shit on other people.
And how you view yourself in those light as the bravado and where you think folks owe you shit because of what you bring to the table. It's not a good place to be,
It's
and people
not.
don't like you. People
No.
are like, and it's something that I think when people talk about people's ego, they don't necessarily ever say it to their face, but it's conversation that's always had behind their backs, like, oh yeah, he got a big ego. That's how
Mm-hmm.
he acts. Hence, like the song with the little double entendre, he got a big ego. It's not something that you praise people for. You don't praise people for having a large ego. You praise them for being humble in spite of everything else that may be going on there, where they could have an ego that could be proved to be detrimental later in life. But I think there's just the dynamics of your upbringing, trauma, how you perceive life, if you have empathy, all translate into a space where ego can either ruin your life or support you growing and building relationships as long as it's kept in check.
Mm. And you know what? On that, I think this is a good place to take a break and come back with our last sip of tea.
All righty.
And we are back. This is the last sip of tea with your Hood Dolly Mama. I am your Hood Dolly Mama. Today's quote is Ego Trip, a journey to nowhere.
Short and sweet.
Yes, that is attributed to Robert Half.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you for joining us this week on Sippin' Tea with Nat and Z. You know, you can follow us on IG at sippintea_Nat and Z _pod and on Facebook at Sippin' Tea Nat and Z to get info on upcoming shows, topics, guests, and news. And thanks for listening, and catch us on our next episode where we talk about narcissism. Have a good week, y'all. Watch out, ego.